Hello, thank you for joining RasPipKr tutorials. I'm Martin Parker, and in this Python tutorial video I'm going to talk to you about input. Input is what you would put in as part of your program or script, GUI, whatever you're working with. And basically that can be a string, it can be a float, it can be an integer, it can be anything, and you can specify what you want to actually receive. So I'm going to just do a in the Python 2 version, it used to be classed as raw input, I believe, but in Python 3 you can just put input. So I'm going to call a as my variable, and that is going to be equal to input, and I'm going to put in here, this will basically print to screen and the cursor will appear at the end of the text. So I'm going to put what is your name with a question mark. I'm going to put a space, so I'll get a space between the cursor and the text, and I'm going to close it off with my brackets, and basically I'm going to press enter, and then it's going to print to screen what is your name, and then I can enter my name. So I'm going to put Martin, and when I press enter it's accepted that. It's not thrown any syntax errors or anything. Now if I press A to call A's value, it's returned what I entered. So you could run some code taking in input, your age, your date of birth, or what your favourite football team is, or boy band, girl band, whatever, and you can store it in your computer code whilst that code is running. So like there we took it's basically raw input. It's either a string, integer, or a float. It can be anything, but it actually stores it as a string. As you can see here, it's got the quotes around it. Now if I want to put in some numbers and some date of birth or whatever, as well as text, then I can do. You can even have space in between it. So if I run that piece of code again by just scrolling up, press enter, so it's into my working line. If I press enter, it's going to say what is your name. Well, I'm going to put my name as Martin, space, and I'm just going to enter some random numbers in, 234 space 3.356. okay, so these are just random things, mean nothing whatsoever. If I press enter, it's accepted all of that, even though the space is in there, and integers, strings, and a float. And if I call A, it's going to repeat back what I entered. But you can actually specify what you want A to be. So if I put A is equal to, and if I want to have a whole number, I will put int, and I can then put the input in the bracket, and then put the string text that I want to put, enter something, and I'm just going to put a space and then my bracket, and notice how when I entered that bracket, it's closed off from the input onwards. So that is closing off the input part of this, and now I need to put another bracket, and then it's shaded out the other bracket here. So it shaded it like so. That means it's closed off that piece of code, and if I press enter, it's now asking me to enter something. Now if I put my name in this time, it's going to cause a problem, and it's come up with a value error because it didn't receive an integer. It received a string. That's easy for me to say. So if I run that again, if I click on it, bring it down, and then press enter again, and this time I'm going to enter 3.45, which is a number, but it isn't an actual integer. So you have to make sure that you enter what you're asking, otherwise you will have to use a try and an exception to capture this error and give the user some input information on what to enter. So if I use that again, and then if I enter the number 33, it's accepted at this time because it is a whole number. And this is kind of touching on to the variables in some way, like we did in a previous video. The whole number is an int, and that's why it's accepted that perfectly fine. If I call a, it's going to tell me that a was stored as 33. I could get this line back, and I'm going to change it from being an integer. I'm going to specify that I want to receive a float, and if I get to the end of the line, press enter, it's now expecting a float number to be passed, so that is something with a decimal point in it. So if I put 1.21, it will accept it. Anything else without a decimal point is going to cause a problem. And if I call a, it's going to return what I entered. So if I click on again, and this time I'm going to specify that I want to receive a string. So it will set it as a string. But the difference here is if I put my name in, my mistake, I need to press enter and then enter my name in. It's accepted a, taking in my name as Martin. But because we are working with a string, and if I enter some numbers, it's accepted them, because a string, when you tell it to take something, it can accept it that way. But you can't expect it to work the other way around. You need to specify if you want to have numbers in there. But like I did touch on a previous video about which one was it? I think it was my Boolean video. So my last video, I took input as text, and I had my age, and I put it in as like so. Whoa, I'm not 434. I put it in like that when I was doing the if-else statement. But what I could have done is similar to how I done on the previous line above here. I could have had that if-else statement taking the argument of text. Now this will make sense if you were to watch my Boolean video, but as I'm talking about the types of input, I thought I'd clear that point up regarding string, or forcing it to be a string. So that's pretty much it for inputs, but you can use it in quite a good way. So I could create a little function here. So if I call if I define a function called test, and I pass in a num as a input value, and I want this to be an integer, so it's going to work correctly, and I'm going to take input of that integer, enter a number. Okay, so there we are storing a variable called num, and it's taking a whole number, an integer, as input after the text of enter a number. So now I'm going to do a for loop. So for I in range, and I'm going to do it the amount of times that we entered as our number. So basically I'm going to print I, and that's pretty much it. And if I press enter now, that function is now set in there, and if I call that function, oops, forgot my parentheses, you have to make sure you put your brackets on when you call a function. Just so you know, because I messed up there. So yes, enter a number. So if I put 5, it's going to print out the numbers up to 5. It won't do the last number because it starts at 0. And if I run the test function again and I put 20, whoops, not as an argument, Martin, I'm making a mess here, aren't I? I'm entering 20 this time. There you go, it's printed out the numbers up to 20. There you go, people make mistakes. I did a couple then, but that's part of learning. You learn by your mistakes, and yeah, so I won't edit that out because I'd like to keep things honest and real, and everybody makes mistakes, so don't worry about it, learn from it. That's the key point. Okay, well that's it for inputs. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.